Hello again, Mr. RG Stuff here, back in the workshop with my linear tracking record player. And this is one I showed in a previous video, only it's not, because you may notice that it's been completely rebuilt. So it's still the same basic mechanism. I've still got this audio CD drive mechanism here, and this is basically what drives the tone arm across. And I'm still using the same basic principle, which is basically the tone arm is pivoted like an ordinary tone arm, but as you can see, as it gets dragged into the record by the groove, it triggers this sensor here, and this little light here shows when the sensor is triggered. And at the minute I've got no power to the drive mechanism, so it won't move, but I'll show you that in a moment. And I basically redesigned all of this so that, as well as this sort of motion here, it can also go up and down, because one of the big problems I had with the previous design was that there was absolutely no sort of vertical movement, which meant that getting the right sort of pressure on the record, so getting the stylus to press onto the record with the right sort of weight, was completely impossible. I've no idea what the tracking weight or tracking force was previously, but I'm sure it's far too high. This has been set up by means of this little weight adjustment thing here to be about 5 grams. So that's very much in line with the cartridge and what the record expects. So I've been through a few different design phases with this thing here. I've been using it as an excuse to learn FreeCAD rather than OpenSCAD, which is what I've been using previously. So I've built the parts a few times. I mean, this is a previous one that I built, and you can see, so it sort of goes up and down on a plane pivot there, but it turns on a bearing like so, and then I've just got sort of attachments at the either end. I'm not using the one there, but I am using the one at the front for the actual tone arm bit itself. Now the electronics are still pretty much the same. I've changed this micro switch here, and it happens to be a normally closed one rather than a normally opened one, so I've had to adjust the programming on the board very slightly. I've added another switch here. This basically just turns on the motor, so that when the sensor is triggered, it does actually move. So we just do that now. So turn the motor. You can see it actually moves along. The other thing I have done though is I've actually got a couple of amplifiers. So I've got my own homebrew amplifier, which I was using last time, and I've also got a rather better, still cheap and nasty, but a rather better amplifier, which I'm also going to switch between the two as it plays the record, so you can see the difference or hear the difference. And this is because on the previous version it sounded pretty awful, and I thought it was probably the tracking weight, but having sorted out the tracking weight, it still sounds pretty awful, so I thought it's probably the amp. So I thought I would connect up another one and give everybody the chance to compare the two. The other thing which you might just better see in the corner over here is that I've got a sheet of white paper, and basically on top here I've got a little torch. It's probably not showing very well. And the little torch is basically just putting a spot of light on this paper, and actually allows me to see the tracking across the paper. Now I've turned the main light off, so the spot of light is easier to see. If I reset the mechanism, and then place the needle on the edge of the record, and basically what I'm doing is placing it such that it's just on and the green light is off, so it's not trying to advance immediately. You should see there's a spot of light there, and I know from previous tests that it moves to about there, and I'll show that. And if I use a ruler, or in fact let's just use a set of calipers here. The distance between those is somewhere in the region of 33 millimeters, maybe 34 millimeters, and indeed that's a very similar distance to the set of grooves on the record. So essentially what that demonstrates is that there really isn't any sort of tilt or turn in the tone arm. It is actually just moving directly across the record, and the tone arm should be at the same angle to the record at all points. Now, it's not strictly speaking, because there is a certain amount of movement this out here at the very beginning of the record, and depending on the record it can also come in a bit as well. It can actually come in past where it triggers the sensor. So if it hits the end stop, which is here, and then triggers the sensor, it can actually go a little bit further too. So the distance the dot moves across the paper may be more than the actual distance across the grooves for those reasons. Now, in my previous video I said that the spot of light should just stay still, which is of course completely wrong, because the torch does move up and down the carriage. If the torch was mounted at right angles on the carriage here, then it would actually have put a dot of light over here, which arguably wouldn't have moved because the carriage is just moving back and forth like that, and not tilting or turning, which would have caused the light to swing back and forth like so. Okay, so let's give it a go. This is the original lamp, my homebrew one. And that's the improved amp. That's not mine, that's a commercial one. Definitely sounds a lot better. So as the tone arm bends into the record, because it's pulled in by the grooves, the spot of light will move, but the mechanism will actually try to correct it, but it will still cause it to move along because the torch is moving. It's just the angle is being flattened out, so it's being kept at right angles to this bit over here. If I move it in a bit, you can see the carriage moves. Oh, that sounds tinny, doesn't it? That's not great. I'm going to have to rebuild that. And then it gets dragged into the end stop by the final groove that goes in. So at this point, I sort of pick it up, bend it that way slightly, push the reset button, and then turn off the power to the motors, so that then I can reposition it without it causing the carriage to move forward again. Well, I'm really pleased with this build. I'm really pleased with how well all the 3D printed parts came out, and it does work really well. And I made a few other sort of wiring adjustments and getting rid of the batteries and tidying up the amplifiers and just generally making it a bit better. It still plays records in very much the same way. I do have some other plans for some more advanced linear tracking record players, and maybe even more linear tracking gramophones. So I will definitely be revisiting this in the future. Okay, that's it for now. Thanks for watching, and if you have enjoyed this video, please subscribe to Mr. RG Stuff. Thank you.